Okay, welcome to another episode of Stories from Physical Culture. I'm your host, Pat Comer, and we're coming from the weight room Galva, my gym. All right, today I'm doing part 2 of my stories on Sergio Oliva. I noticed in yesterday's YouTube video that they misspelled Oliva. They spelled it Olivia. It's O-L-I-V-A, Oliva. So that wasn't my fault. That was spell check. Anyway, I'm going to start with my personal stories of Sergio. Well, I first heard of Sergio, I was 12 years old. My friend Paul Talon and I, we would, in the summer, go down to the YMCA and you weren't supposed to go to the big weight room was way down in the basement. You weren't supposed to go there until you're 15, but we always, Bill Goslin, he was the reigning Mr. Fox Valley, and he was kind of king of the gym at that time. And we'd always just go to the Y and say, well, we're training with Bill Goslin. And he didn't mind because he was teaching us stuff. Well, anyway, yeah, I'll show you a picture of Bill Goslin. I got him up. He's a great guy. All right. That's Bill Goslin. I don't know if you can see this. I'm trying to get. And that's him too. It's on the wall. So anyway, so one day we're talking in the gym, and he says to Paul and I, "Hey man," he didn't say "Hey man," but he's like, "You guys got to go down to the health food store and get the latest article on Sergio Oliva, in Iron Man magazine." And I had never, I think I'd seen muscle magazines, but I never knew where to buy them. They were real rare at that time, and only this little health food store, Here's Health, downtown Aurora, sold it. So anyway, I went and got this magazine. It's November 1975. So I was 12 years old. I was born in 1963, and Bill Goslin, he had gone to see Sergio train. He went to Chicago. Sergio was training at the Duncan YMCA in Chicago. He had gone to see him train, and he found out this article was coming out, and Paul and I rode our bikes downtown Aurora to the health food store, and I bought this magazine in 1975. And what other stories of Sergio? So that's how I was introduced to Sergio. Bill Goslin said it was incredible to watch him train at that gym. Well, later on, I lifted and I managed to work my way into Ernie Franz's gym. And one time we were going to a contest. His wife Diane was. She was competing in a bodybuilding contest. I think I was about 20 years old at the time. I remember I was working as a bouncer at night, so I could only go to the pre-judging. But, it's pretty cool to hang out with Ernie at these bodybuilding contests, powerlifting contests, because everybody knows him. He's real famous in weightlifting and bodybuilding. And all of a sudden I see Sergio coming down the aisle, and he's like Ernie's best friend. He's got this big smile on his face, and he's like, "Ernie," this is Ernie. That's Ernie. And he's like, "Ernie, how you doing?" And they acted like they were real good friends. I mean, Ernie didn't introduce me to him, but I was right there watching this exchange. And it turns out Sergio's wife was competing against Ernie's wife, Diane. And so yeah, I saw the pre-giant, and it's pretty. Sergio's just huge, and so whenever he walks around, especially at a bodybuilding contest, everybody's looking at him. And so anyway, I went to work and I found out Diane won the contest, and and Sergio's wife got second, I guess. And Ernie told me that Sergio was pretty upset that Diane won, but if you look at Diane, there we go. You know, you can't beat that. This was this was probably about 1980, about 1982, 1983. So anyway, Sergio, and I found this out from my training partner, Tommy, he said Sergio used to come down to Ernie's and train. This was back when Ernie had his gym on the second floor on Broadway in Aurora, up above Dut's Dugout. It was just a little gym. It's like this gym, real small, but they trained there. And Sergio, and Ernie always had a lot of weight because he's a big power lifter. But Sergio would come out on weekends and train once in a while, and it was right across the street from the Aurora Fire Station. And Broadway, back in those days, this is the late 60s probably, early 70s, and Sergio was, he was huge. Back then you didn't see people like that. It was just not many people lifted weights, and so when you see somebody like Sergio, it was, everybody just stopped and stared. Well, Sergio would go out on Broadway and start hitting his most muscular poses, and he'd just stop traffic. Yeah, and see, Sergio was so popular, especially in Chicago. The backstory of Sergio is he was raised in Cuba, and when Castro came to power, Sergio was an Olympic lifter. He went to the Pan American Games and he ran from the Pan American Games to seek asylum in the United States. And so he went to Florida, and then he moved to Chicago because that's how he liked it. And he was training at the Duncan YMCA in Chicago, and Bob Guida was a Mr. America. He was also an Olympic lifter. And him and Sergio started training, and he told Sergio he should be a bodybuilder because he was just built like a bodybuilder. I mean, he was huge, small waist, had perfect genetics. I don't think anybody's had better genetics than Sergio. So anyway, and so back then all the Chicago bodybuilders and lifters knew each other, and Sergio would come to Aurora and train at Ernie's. Oh, how Sergio got his job. That's what I was talking about. Okay, he was a Chicago cop, and it was back in the day when they were having all these riots in Humboldt Park with the Hispanics and gangs and stuff. It was a real lot of stuff going on in Humboldt Park. But Sergio was like a god to these people because he was, Cuban, Hispanic. He lived in the neighborhood right near Humboldt Park. I think it was Humboldt Park. It was a long time ago. But I remember there was riots there and stuff. Well, they gave Sergio a job as a police officer, so he'd just keep everybody under control out there because everybody loved Sergio and nobody was gonna mess with Sergio. And Sergio got a great job being a Chicago cop. And one more good story I heard this on John Hansen's podcast, Bodybuilding Legends Show. It's a real good podcast. If you get a chance to listen to it, it's really good. Anyway, so they were talking about this guy named, I think his name is Rock Stonewall. He was a WBBG competitor, Dan Lurie's competitions up in New York. But he was pretty big. He owned a gym in Chicago. And so naturally, Sergio knew him, because they were both big, huge bodybuilders in a time when there weren't many, and so all the Chicago bodybuilders and lifters knew each other. And well, anyway, this Rock Stonewall guy had gotten in a bunch of trouble with the mafia, and he ran prostitution rings in Chicago, and he used to show porn movies at his gym in Chicago and stuff. And anyway, there was he'd gotten in a bunch of trouble. He's dead now. He died a while back, but he'd gotten in a bunch of trouble, and the cops were after him. And so Sergio, he didn't speak real good English, and he spoke mostly Spanish, and so he didn't really know what was going on in the police force. And so one day, Sergio's out on his beat, and he's talking to Rock Stonewall. They're friends. They're probably talking about weightlifting, and then all these cops come up and they arrest this Rock Stonewall guy. Apparently he's one of the most wanted guys in Chicago. And but Sergio didn't know. And so Sergio's boss is like, this guy's the most wanted guy in Chicago. How come you're talking to him like your old buddies? But they let Sergio get away with all that stuff because he was Sergio. Anyway, those are my personal stories on Sergio. And now I'm going to read that article that Bill Goslin sent me to get when I was 12 years old. I've been a big fan of Sergio ever since. All right, it's called Sergio Oliva, a Legendary Superman. All right. Sergio, 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 roared the crowd as Olivia completed his second curtain call, as the big Cuban again mounted the posing dice for the third time that evening. The sweat glistened on his brow and immense shoulders. The crowd moved forward in their seats to get a closer look at one of the best built and most highly developed muscular humans the world has ever seen. He checked his position under the posing lights, and all was quiet, almost an eerie quiet, as if the audience had left the darkened auditorium. The big man squatted in the circle of light, extended his left leg out to the side, and slowly raised both arms up into the classic double-armed bicep shot. Pandemonium reigned. Shouts, screams, groans, flashbulbs popped, chairs overturned as every breathing body in the house surged forward. He knew he had them in the palm of his hand, this refugee from communism, and he loved every second of it. Still balancing on his right leg, he turned back to the throng, and never was such a back seen. Stretching his arms out to the sides, he first wriggled his triceps and then flexed his biceps as the audience gasped in awe. He spread those super wide lats, and people tripped over their own feet in an attempt to get closer to the stage to see if they were real. Raising his arms overhead, he slowly lowered them until they were parallel to the floor, and alternately isolated his scapulae and tensed the smaller muscles of the upper back, the muscles which make a good back great. It looked like he had snakes crawling around under his sweat-soaked skin, and the mob loved it. This is what they had paid hard cash to see. Yes, there was a Mr. What You May Call It contest, but no one soul in the audience could tell you the name of the winner who had just been crowned just 15 minutes previous. So mesmerized had the crowd been that they lost all sense of time and reason. In 15 short minutes, 900 seconds, this man, who many believe to be the greatest physique the world has ever seen, took complete control and dominated all within sight without uttering a word. He slowly turned around to face the admirers and was greeted by clapping hands, stamping feet, and shouts of "More! More!" He slowly raised that ham-like arm for silence, and all were still. Someone threw him a towel from off stage, and it was a muscle show just to see him wipe the sweat from his head and arms. "Thank you very much, my friends," he said, with his deep, resonant voice and thick Spanish accent. "I'd like to stay and do more for you, but I have to catch plane to take me back to my family in Chicago. With that simple farewell, he waved to the crowd and disappeared backstage. But it wasn't always like that. Sergio's first entry into the world of physique competition in the U.S. occurred in 1965 at the Mr. Chicago YMCA contest. As he warmed up backstage, the other contestants realized that here was a man to be reckoned with. He was big, weighing around 190, and extremely shapely. His arms were impressive and seemed to grow larger with each curl and press he performed. Unknown to the other contestants, he wasn't. Avoiding them because of antisocial tendencies, he worked fast and quietly in the corner, avoiding the eyes of his competition, because he could not speak a word of English. As his name was called, he mounted the posing platform, a broad smile stretching his face. He jumped left, hopped right, shot his arm in the air, tensed his right bicep, contracted his pecs, did an about face, and repeated the same gyrations with his back to the audience. He turned, bowed, and left. The crowd buzzed with amazement. What was it? A new dance step? Or maybe the poor fellow has the itch? His posing routine probably took no more than 10 seconds, and he left the stage before the judges could assess his physique. As was to be expected, he failed to place in this local contest, which was won by Steve Kodas, who also beat Sergio for the Mr. Illinois title this same year, and went on to capture the most muscular award at the Teenage Mr. America contest. Previous to coming to the U.S., Sergio had been a member of the Cuban national weightlifting team. His training in those days was much more strenuous than that of other members of the team. Like other Olympic lifters, the 3 Olympic lifts plus squats and pulls were practiced 3 days a week in sets of 1 to 5 reps. But because he was also interested in bodybuilding, Sergio would also perform the usual bodybuilding exercises in sets of 15 to 20 reps on his off days. The communists took over the island, and Sergio felt repressed due to the great many restrictions placed upon citizens. When the team made a trip to Jamaica, Sergio saw his opportunity for freedom and sought political asylum at the American Embassy because he heard that the U.S. was welcoming refugees from communism. He was transported to Florida and worked his way north to Chicago, where he settled in a Spanish-speaking area, which also housed the Division Street YMCA, which contained a well-equipped weight room and had as its instructor, future Mr. America, Bob Guida. This was the beginning of a very close and lasting friendship between these two giants of might and muscle. When Guida got transferred 2 miles away to the Duncan YMCA, it was only natural that Sergio would switch his training to Duncan. It was here that Guida transformed the whole YMCA into a weight training club. With his wit and charm, he was able to induce the YMCA officials to enlarge Duncan's weight training facilities to the largest in the world. The bodybuilding area at Duncan measures approximately 50 feet by 90 feet and is loaded with all manner of equipment. The heavy lifting room is just off the main room and is equipped with numerous Olympic sets, heavy-duty equipment, 2 platforms, power racks, etc. Surely enough to keep everyone happy. With tons of equipment and publicity, many national lifting and physique champs such as Russ Knipp, Mike Huska, Alan Ball, Philip Grapaldi, Joe Pullen, Larry Scott, Chuck Sipes, John Tristram, and Hank Zarco began to train at and put on exhibitions at the Duncan YMCA. Everyone benefited from the Guida influence. National championships were held in Chicago and surrounded by all of this talent. Everyone, including Sergio, trained harder than ever. He was bitten by the bodybuilding bug, and though challenged many times to train with the lifters, he never accepted, but worked twice as hard with his bodybuilding routines, seeming to forget that he was once an Olympic lifter of international caliber. Sergio tells a story about the time during this period when he got a job as a helper loading and unloading sides of beef on a truck, a job he was well suited for. He arrived at the packing plant one morning before the sun had risen. Not speaking any English, he somehow made it known that he was to begin work this day. He helped the truck driver load his truck and then went out that day delivering beef and returned quite early in the afternoon. The driver told him that he could leave now, but not understanding English, Sergio thought that they had come back to the plant for a break. Since the sun had not yet set, he no sooner sat down than another driver on a second shift implored him to help load his truck. Not seeing his first driver around, Sergio complied and left with the second driver to complete his rounds. It wasn't until his second week on the job that Sergio was informed that he was only required to work one shift. He was a bit taken by this, since the work was not tiring and he had never made so much money in his life and wanted to continue the double shift. But the local union men told him that he would get the boss in trouble if he worked two shifts. So he settled down to working only the early one so that he could get to the gym as early as possible when it was not yet crowded. Though Gaida and Olivia were the best of friends, training in the same gym at the same time, Olivia could not be induced to follow Bob's example and train according to the now famous peripheral heart action or sequence circuit system of training, in which the weightman selects 5 or 6 exercises for different muscle groups and proceeds to do a complete circuit, one set of each of these before starting the second set. Olivia preferred training on the conventional pump system and usually included many supersets. Olivia won all the local physique contests, and after being coached and posing by Gaida, and decided to enter both the junior and senior Mr. America events along with Gaida. He won the 1966 Junior Mr. America contest along with the Most Muscular Award. Gaida was second in both categories. 1 month later at the Mr. America contest, Gaida was declared the winner. Sergio received second place and took the Most Muscular. It was after the 1966 contest that Sergio decided to intensify his training and go professional. He signed a contract with Weider and won the Mr. Olympia title in 1967, 1968, and 1969, and probably would still be winning if the Austrian oak Arnold Schwarzenegger hadn't made his appearance. During these years, Sergio married a beautiful Mexican maiden and began raising a family. He had to stop hopping around the world for contests and posing exhibitions and settle down as a good husband and father should. He applied for a job as a Chicago policeman and passed the test with flying colors. While waiting to begin training as a police cadet, he secured a job as a physical instructor at the police academy, a job which he enjoyed, but not as much as he would have enjoyed being out on the street with people. He anticipated his appointment eagerly, and then the roof caved in. The federal government declared the police department test invalid because they discriminated against minority groups. How can this be, he wondered. Here I am, a minority group member who studied hard for the test and passed with high mark, and the government say I'm discriminated against. He was heartbroken. He considered appealing the ruling, but was informed that the only way he could become a Chicago police officer was to take the next test. And if he was successful, he would again be placed on the waiting list for appointment as a cadet. 3 years of waiting went down the drain, but he was not despondent. Depressed, yes, but despondent, no. He had made contacts in South America and Mexico and began starring in Spanish language films, spending 2 or 3 months on location, and then returning home for a short rest before shooting more film. When the myth enters the gym, everyone knows he has arrived. Leopard patterned shirt, bright red slacks, highly polished boots, heavy religious jewelry jingling around his neck, thick bracelets encircling his left wrist, heavy rings on 4 fingers. How can you miss him? He looks like a one-man sideshow. His super size only heightened by his flashy clothes and ornaments. But by chance, if you are engrossed in a set, struggling to force out those last few reps, and you are unaware of his arrival, if he makes his presence known by standing over you and throwing forth some words of encouragement, do it! Push him out! Come on, try again! One more! Just one more! Don't be at all surprised. He greets everyone in the gym the same way. Newcomer or old buddy. Greets them like he has personal interest in their progress. Hi, Jeff. I hear you do 400 squat last week. It's good, eh? The arm looked good, Chris. Keep it up. You and me, we benched today, okay, Al? And so it goes as he passes through the Duncan YMCA weight room on his way to the locker room. He exchanges a few cordialities with everyone on this particular day and is informed that there are a couple of fellows who drove all the way from Milwaukee to see him train and talk to him. Sergio greets these 2 strangers with warm hand clasp and implores that they wait a few minutes while he changes into his sweatsuit. This is Monday, and on Monday and Thursday, Olivia trains chest, back, shoulders, and calves. He begins his chest work with bench presses, 135 pounds on the bar, and he goes at the iron like hungry vulture after meat. He pumps out 50 fast reps, never fully locking out his arms except on the 25th and 40th rep. After this first grueling warm-up set, he hops up to the dipping bars, and using body weight only, he pumps out 20 fast reps, going deep and low, but again, not locking out the arms at the completion of each rep. Now he is in his element. It's him against the iron. He performed 6 more sets of benches, adding weight for each set and cutting back on the reps until he is in the area of 6 reps with 325 pounds, pausing only long enough to do another set of 20 dips and add more weight to the bar. When he reaches his goal for the day, the procedure is reversed. The weight of the bar is decreased and the reps are increased, but on the way down, he does dips with heavy dumbbells strapped around his waist for sets of 10. The man with the gigantic chest completes 12 sets of bench presses, 7 on the way up and 5 on the way down, an equal number of sets of dips. He will vary the amount of reps and weight used from the workout to workout, but always does about 12 sets and works up to and beyond 300 pounds in fast but strict sets. The rest of this article is mostly about his workout. You guys probably don't want to hear about all the sets and reps. There's some good shots, so there's Sergio doing tricep press, and you got big arms there, you know. And here's some more squats and one arm rows and curls. There's a couple more. All right. Well, I didn't want to bore you with just talk about reps and sets, and I mean everybody does their own workouts. I mean, I don't really agree with Bob Guida's PHA. To me, you know, I like to work slow and heavy. Sergio worked fast and heavy, a lot of sets, a lot of volume. I like the volume, but I like to work out slow. But I'm old, you know, 57, so. All right. Thanks for watching. We'll talk to you later.